Thank you. We want to start. We want to start the afternoon session. Good afternoon. So we would want to go straight to the presentations this afternoon, so that we are able to finish in good time. And I will say, I said yesterday,
okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I hope you had a nice lunch. My name is Helen Angulu from Kitale National Polytechnic. I'm presenting an innovation, not a research paper. And the title of my innovation is Utilization of Culinary Innovation in Making Namrunde Crunchy Snacks from Grasshopper Flour. Now, I'm sure most of you grew up in the rural area. Now, taking care of cattle was one of the activities that you mostly took. So when we are talking of Namrunde, Namrunde is actually a Luya name, mainly for the male grasshopper that was commonly gathered by young boys and girls, and usually in the evening they could come home with the Namrunde and they roast and they eat. And when you talk of senene, senene is a Ugandan name. The senene, it is in the same group of insects like grasshoppers, but this one is green, the way you look at it. And it is very common as one of the best dishes. It is usually collected during the rain season, and surprisingly, it is like the way you collect kumbe kumbe. I don't know if you know kumbe kumbe. I know if from this region maybe you don't consume kumbe kumbe, but from Western, that's a delicacy. The next slide. Now, that was just telling you what Namrunde is and why grasshoppers. So we are addressing the issue of food security, and we are saying actually in every night 12.8 million people go hungry, and majority of these people could be children or our children. And there's a challenge. As we are talking now, there are areas in Kenya, like in the last 2 years, 3 years, there was no rain completely because of the climate change. And we are talking of our normal food is shrinking. And that's why now if you want to have ugali on your table, it should be more than 150 just for 2 kg. When you are talking of maybe 10 years ago, or even 20 years, it could be 20 shillings. So we are now thinking of a smarter way of providing alternatives. And we are saying, apart from just talking of ugali, maize, and all that, and the ugali is carbohydrate, then you are also talking of the malnutrition in Africa. Then how do we come in? Then you are saying the best thing maybe is now to look for alternatives. And production. So what motivated this innovation? So the animal protein is under huge pressure because of the ballooning of the world population. People have malnutrition, deficiency in protein, and we are now thinking of how do we use applied research in increasing edible insects, and bringing in other aspects of marketing so that there's a lot of people to accept. So this is a new area and with a lot of interest. So therefore, TVET can do applied research, partner with the industry, so that they can be responsive by developing of new insect products and improving cultivation. The research objective one, the general was to utilize culinary innovation in making namrunde, and then from there, the general ones was to have recipes, look at appropriate procedures, and elaborate on nutritive value of namrunde crunchy snacks. When you're talking of procedures, then you are talking of modification of existing recipes of the crunchy snacks. So that is a picture of freshly collected senene, and I told you in Uganda, they are even sold in supermarkets. They are sold on marketplace. The way we do think of omena being sold in market stalls in Uganda, it is true. So the innovation was done in Kitale National Polytechnic in February to July 2022. The design was experimental. We used recipes and reviewed the existing literature to inform us on the nutritive value of the grasshoppers. That is a dry senene packed for sale in one of the countries in West Africa. Sorry. So nutritive facts of senene, we are talking of it's 40% protein, then we are talking of 3% is fat, and we are talking of the unsaturated fats. Then we have the dietary fibers from the, we call it the chitin, or from the skeleton part of the insect. And then we are talking of, if you compare the grasshopper nutritive value with other sources like chicken, eggs, it is far better. And we have also, it has very high fat content, and we are talking, those are the health fats. So if you compare with meat, then the insects or the senene are more healthy. So that is a child sampling senene. So they can be eaten fresh, or they can be used to improve other products. Sorry, inaitwa technology. So those are the outcomes. We have senene flour. So using the senene flour, you can be able to enrich other products. You can do the baby weaning flour. You can do sorted senene just the way they are. Then we also made some school mini cookies for school-going children. Then we had the sugar-free Victoria cake, and we were actually targeting the general public. And then Tiscons and senene wholemeal cereals. So we mixed the flour or the paste from the senene, and then we made cereals that can actually be consumed for breakfast. That is sorted. In conclusion, actually we can be able to use the senene and extracts to enhance baby weaning meals as an ingredient in snacks for school going and addressing issues of malnutrition and food security. So these are my recommendations. The recommendations, we are talking of the Nutrition Association of Kenya. Maybe we need more awareness. Workshops should be held to promote insect products. We can do on radios, TVs, and all that. Then the Ministry of Agriculture research institutions and TVET institutions should venture into how best we can do domestication and do mass production of these insects. So more research can be done on the best practices to incorporate insect products in everyday diet without altering the nutritive value. Asante sana.
Thank you very much. Let's appreciate Helen for the good presentation. Thank you. I want to take this opportunity and welcome any concern, any question, any recommendation, please. Yes, at the back. Some.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Helen. A very well presented idea indeed. And we know that grasshoppers would be able to give us proteins from the nutrition aspect. My main concern is about the acceptability of these products and how are you going to sustain it, given that probably where are you going to get the grasshoppers for sustainability to enable you get the unga as you require, because in any given innovation we would want to see this getting into the market and produced in large quantities. So how are you going to ensure that production is continued? Thank you.
Do you have another question so that she can be able to answer all the questions at the same time? Another question? If you do not have a question, I will ask. Now that grasshoppers we have diverse species, what species were you able to settle for your product? And how are you able to recognize that these species are the ones that have the highest content of protein? Maybe you answer the two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam, for your question. If you look at my recommendation, I've said we need to look away of domestication, and there's research going on already. And in my introduction, I said in Uganda and West Africa, South Africa, I'm hoping you are not looking at the normal grasshoppers that we'll see them jump here. These are special grasshoppers. They are green in color. Scientific name should be Ruspora something. I just need to do my, but the local name in Uganda, it is Senene. They are harvested during certain season and in mass. And are even sold. If you go to Uganda, in the supermarkets, they are sold. If you go to the stalls, market stalls, you'll even find women and children walking around the way we do kumbe when they're in season. You know, when you're talking of kumbe in this region, mwezi fikiria, but come to Pokot, it is a Turkana, it's a rich area of kumbe. So they are harvested, dried, and they can you can store, preserve, and utilize. Remember, when you are talking of the paste or the flour, you are not using the paste alone. You are doing with other ingredients. So we are talking of recipe modification to increase the nutritive value. I hope I've answered your question, Madam. Thank you. I've also answered yours. The species is not just the normal one, but the senene. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. At this point in time, I want to welcome Andrew Wangila, Nyandarua National Polytechnic.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Wangila, Assistant Supply Chain in Nyandarua National Polytechnic. I'm going to present my presentation on the topic of factors influencing adoption of sustainable supply chain in Kenya, a case of Nyandarua National Polytechnic. The introduction part of it is that from the Asian, supply chain, it was a clerical job. With the recent or current activities that are happening is under strategic management. And this is part of the reasons why I decided to come up with this topic, so that at least we can see the essence of supply chain in the economy of Kenya. When we are talking about sustainability, it's about care of the environment, not interfering with any level of the surroundings, and also not interfering with the needs of the consumers. And that's key to our emerging trends, and especially to the TVET institutions. And in this circumstance, we are talking of having a circular or a complete or a zero waste management in any society. Different perspectives that has been taken, or the studies, both in Kenya, international and global. You are aware that in Kenya, 75% of all the expenses, they are under procurement. And 30 to 40% of GDP of our budget is under procurement. Now you can see the weight at which this study is important to us. Under regional, the trade has influenced a lot, and especially has promoted the progression of sustainability, and especially in the multilateral systems. Globally, the 34% of the countries are adopting the sustainable services. Under statement of the problem, why did I decide to discuss the sustainability of supply chain? As I said in the introduction, that most of the institutions, and especially the government institutions, the key reason why we are in operation is to ensure that there's a satisfactory in terms of service delivery, and also so that the consumers can get the value for their money. Regardless of this, from the literature review, few studies have been done, especially in this line of sustainability in relation to national polytechnics. And this is why we decided to come up with this study, so that we can see the gaps and fill those gaps. The four main objectives, specific objectives. One is about the government regulation. Two is management support. Three is information technology, and the fourth is socio-economic factor. The literature review, we have different scholars who did research in this line, and their findings are going to help us so that we can strive on how we can work or come up with the solutions to the study. One of it is termed technology adoption. This, mostly, we are talking about technology and also in support of management. From the findings, once you have good infrastructures, and especially the system infrastructures, then working in such an area becomes easy. 2 is about the theory of planned behavior. For any consumer has different attitudes, perceptions on how to spend, on what to spend. Now, when you're talking about this theory, we are concerned about the social, economic, and also the behavioral of human beings. The last one is about transactional theory, which talks about, when you're talking about transactional, what comes to your mind is about the cost, the value. Before we can spend anywhere, does it have any quality in it, or does it have any value to our services? The research methodology. I use cross survey, and the target population was the target departments were 45, and from those 45 departments, I took 2 senior users. This is the head of department and also the assistant, because they are people who are used to procure or requisite these goods from the stores, and now the goods can be procured from the main suppliers. And the reason, as I said earlier, they understand the specifications and the standards of the products they need, and that's the reason why researcher decided to use, so that the outcome can be reliable and can be valid. Now, the pilot test is about the reliability and also the validity. When you're talking about the validity, you're talking about the tools, accuracy of the tools, how accurate the instruments you're going to use, so that we can come up with the better solutions. And when you're talking about reliability, we are talking about the dependability and the consistency of the data that you're going to use. The summary of findings. From the summary of findings, we found out that the government policy had the lowest or had the least linear relations, meaning that the government is fully supporting the TVET and also the sustainable environment. Followed by the socio-economic, and the third was information technology. The last was management support. In conclusion, that be the fact the government had the highest, we are still requesting that the government is supposed to support these institutions with the required systems, and especially the supply chain systems. And when you're talking about supply chain systems, we are talking about the softwares which are supposed to be used in supply chain, and we are talking about the RFIDs, radio frequency identification, the enterprise resource planning, the vendor management inventory, so that in the same way the institution or the suppliers or the procurement department can work hand in hand with all the users so that they can come up with a better solution on how they can manage the environment. The recommendation is about the government and also the Polytechnic. The government is about the support of the infrastructure, and for the Polytechnics is about the support of all users. And especially this support can come from the supply chain department, whereby the supply chain department, if they get this knowledge, they can spare or they can become the drivers on how to escalate to all the user departments. And when we are talking about the user departments, we are mostly talking about those departments that procure, and besides the internal users, we have the suppliers who, in most cases, they come from outside. So the only people who can assist them, they are supply chain department, who can take continuous teaching or continuous training, or undertaking them in different benchmarking, so that they can understand on how we can conserve the environment. And when you are talking in such a circumstance, we are supposed to have that partnership with the suppliers, so that even the costs we can reduce in the same line. Being the fact that this area dealt mostly with quantitative and qualitative, we are advising other researchers, when they are doing their research, they can do the same research. However, they can use the qualitative research so that they can come up with a better findings which will support this research too. That marks the end of my presentation. I welcome any concern, any question as from now. Thank you.
Let's appreciate Wangila for his presentation. If you have any question, please get the microphone and put it forward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Wangila, for your presentation. It happens that I'm a trainer in supply chain management. But now my question is a bit different. You have said you carried a research on factors affecting adoption of those strategies in supply chain. Now, considering that supply chain is a universal or has a universal application, are we able to generalize your findings that this is what is happening, or these are the factors really influencing the adoption in other polytechnics? Because you have said a case of Nyandarua National Polytechnic, and we have 11 national polytechnics in Kenya. Apart from that, you said it is from Nyandarua National Polytechnic. I'm wondering how you had 45 departments, and like in a case of a national polytechnic, it is impossible to have more than 30 departments. Thank you.
Another question, please. At the back, yes.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Mine is just maybe a concern. Maybe which research instrument did you use, and maybe did your study was subjected to any piloting? Okay, thank you.
Another concern, please. can respond to those concerns.
Thank you so much. Those are valid questions, and I'll start from the last one. The pilot, I did it from one of the polytechnics, which I used the 10% of the entire population, and on this, I used Nyeri Polytechnic, and the findings supported the research. Two, the research instruments, I used the questionnaires and interviewing, and also through the observation. And now to come back to my colleague, who I see we are in the same line, I agree that in a national polytechnic, not possible to have the 45 departments. Maybe I was supposed to use the best term to use the user departments, and if I comprise all of them, and with a practical case scenario, we have such lines that procure or make requisitions from the procurement department, and they reach the 45. Maybe the only thing I'm supposed to change is the word department, but the users will reach that level. And maybe someone can or you can repeat the first question that you had asked so that I can reply it fully.
I was asking, are we able to generalize the findings regarding that we have 11 polytechnics in Kenya, and you have answered already that one, because you said you carried a pilot study in Nyeri, and then the actual study was done in this institution. But now, using those institutions, are we able to generalize the findings that the factors affecting the adoption in Nyandarua are the same at Kitale National Polytechnic, Kisumu National Polytechnic?
Thank you. You understand that we don't have any perfection in research, and being the fact is a continuous process in researching, and I used a case, and for information, we have 12 national polytechnics in Kenya. This is the youngest one in the entire country. So when we are saying about generalizing, these are work in progress. Being a work in progress, we are going to reach such a level. However, it's understandable that this is a necessity to all the institutions to adopt such. So, answering your question to be specific, that we can't generalize it, but using a case study, we can borrow leaf from one polytechnic to refer the other polytechnic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's appreciate Wangila. Let's appreciate Wangila. I would want to ask if Frida Kawira is in the hall from Nyeri National Polytechnic, please. Please, you can report to the desk here so that we know. Otherwise, if Dr. Zipora is not now anywhere to present, we will wait for Kawira to prepare and present. Stephen Ochieng Otieno. Stephen Ochieng Otieno.
With a measure of people who don't understand the pleasures of life in a hillbilly band.
James Ngachi.
I've
Is
gone
James Ngachi anywhere in the hall?
Well, I was 14. No one cried at 30, still wearing jeans. Amanda, light of my life. The face should have made you a gentleman's wife. Gentleman's wife. The face should made you a gentleman's wife.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Frida Kawira Ireri from the Nyeri National Polytechnic. I'm presenting a paper on quality changes of solar dried chili products. So my project is under agriculture, mainly food security. So the background of the study we have, chili is an important commercial crop. It's mostly used as a culinary product, so to enhance taste, flavor, and also overall appearance of your end product. But it's also very nutritious in terms of biochemical products, phytochemicals. It's a very rich antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. But like any other agricultural product, immediately after harvest, the market is flooded with a lot of chili products. So you have first, the price of the end product is going to be very low. Then with time, chili being a very perishable product, it's going to go bad very fast. Within 2 to 3 days, if you've not done anything, you'll start having the product diminishing in terms of cost and value for the farmer. So the problem you have, a large chilies, fresh chilies, I'm talking here about fresh chilies, the ones that we've immediately harvested, they are quite perishable. So also the farmers, they usually get low returns for their product because the market is flooded with a lot of chilies. Then drying, which is the main method used to preserve chilies, you will have, if you dry and not use appropriate method, the end product will be affected in terms of quality, nutritional quality, and also the overall appearance of the product. Then, like any other agricultural product, you have microbial contamination of your product if you don't use appropriate method to dry your product. So there is need to come up with a method other than you drying your product, the end product will be of good quality. So on justification, we have with appropriate post-harvest technology. Now in my project, I used solar dryers. So what farmers usually do, they use the direct sun drying. So they will just put their product direct on the sun. So you will have loss of nutrients and also the end product will be unattractive. Then chilies, actually they contain 3 times as much as vitamin C compared to oranges, the ones that we usually say have the most vitamin C. Also you have potassium, folic acid, vitamin A, vitamin E. So to enhance the nutritional composition of your products, it's good before drying, you do some pre-treatments. So the pre-treatment, like we are going to see that I used in my project, we have use of sodium metabisulfate. So you might hear about sodium metabisulfate and think it's a bad thing. But if you use the appropriate amount, other than the ones that this unscrupulous people are using, you will have a rich end product. Also, solar drying will enhance the appearance of the final product other than you using a very short period of time in drying your final commodities. So under solar drying, you can reduce the moisture content of fresh chilies from about 80% to 4% within 48 hours. That is within 2 days. Then you'll also have hygienic products because you're not putting your products on the ground, so you'll not have contamination with dust, also with insect and birds. Then solar drying, if you couple solar drying with pre-treatment, the end product in terms of nutritional composition, the appearance, and also microbial contamination is going to be low. So the purpose of or the aim of the research was to contribute to post-harvest loss reduction of chilies through value addition through drying, but the drying I used was solar drying. So the specific objective that I'll be looking at is to determine the phytochemical, nutritional, and microbial quality changes of solar-dried chili products. So okay, so after harvesting the products, I used 2 varieties. One is known as Nemo and the other one Fanaka. They were harvested from Voi in the coastal region. Because like in our country, chilies are mostly grown in the central coastal region, western, and a bit of eastern. Then pre-treatment, there's blanching, that was the control, to see if you just blanch, then you use these chemicals, acetic acid and sodium metabisulfate, if you'll have anything or any improvement in terms of nutritional composition that you're trying to preserve so that your end product will be more nutritious, so that drying will not affect the composition of the final product. So I compared solar drying and oven drying, the one that is mostly used, to see this thing that I'm trying to do, to dry using the solar. Is there any effect? Is there any improvement in terms of nutritional composition, specifically for chilies? So for analysis, I analyzed the moisture then. when I analyze also the color, because color is very important for chilies. You cannot go to buy the red chilies. If they are a bit brown, you might not select. Then color is also important because when you want to buy something, it is first seeing that will make you determine the end decision for you to buy that particular product. Then vitamin A and vitamin C, because chilies are rich in these two commodities. Then capsaicin, the factor that makes chili to be hot. You don't want to dry chilies, then the end product is not as hot as the initial fresh chilies. And the oil and acid insoluble ash, this is where you have the minerals, potassium, folic acid. So from the finding, I compared solar-dried chilies and oven-dried chilies. So for oven-dried chilies, yes, there was a significant difference also between the blanched samples and the ones I used pre-treatment. So you can see if you blanch alone and if you blanch and use the pre-treatment to avoid loss of nutritional composition, there's a significant difference, such that the dried and pre-treated samples have more retention of nutrients with drying. So this is the result for all the components analyzed. We have vitamin A, vitamin C, acid insoluble ash, fat, and capsaicin. Then the results also for solar-dried chilies, the same. Is there any effect in using blanching and use of pretreatment? Then at the end, you compare solar-dried and oven-dried. Using solar-drying, are you adding any significant thing in the dried chilies? So from the end, you will find, or I found, solar-dried chilies are more nutritious, have more nutrient retention compared to just oven-dried. Because even the time it took to oven-dry the samples was more compared to the one that you took during solar drying. Because in the solar dryers, you have temperatures going up to 100 degrees centigrade, but you need to control up to 60 degrees, the temperatures that I used. Then another thing you note, in oven drying, when you close the oven, you don't have moisture movement outside. But in the oven dryer, it's very easy. After the product has been dried, the moisture will just easily escape. So you have faster drying and no reabsorption of moisture by your product. So those are the results for the now oven dried chili product. Then another thing you have when you dry in the thing that the method that farmers usually use, the direct sun drying, you are exposing your product to the environmental conditions, the air, you have birds, you have dust. So your final product is going to be contaminated in terms of microorganisms. So especially molds, you will find you've dried your products, but during storage, molds will start multiplying and growing because you did not observe good hygienic conditions while you are drying your product while they were still wet. So when you dry with solar dryers, the panel dryers that I used, they were somehow like these tables, then it's not on the ground, so you don't have contamination of your product with the environmental condition. So the end product is of high microbial quality. So I analyzed, we have total plate count, coliform, salmonella, yeast, and molds. But at the end, the total plate count and this one, molds, were the ones that were observed. We did not have, I did not see coliform, salmonella. They did not show growth after analysis. So that is the results for microbial contamination of the product. So in conclusion, there was a significant difference of drying chilies under different methods, that is oven and the tunnel solar dryers. There was a difference. The solar dried products had more nutrient retention compared to oven dried chili products. Then solar drying did not affect the nutritional composition of the final product. even if you cannot compare fresh chilies and solar dried, obviously fresh will have more nutrients. But on drying, you find the loss of nutrient under solar dryers was less compared to the ones that were dried in the oven dryer. Then also the use of the pretreatment, that is sodium metabosulfate and blanching with acetic acid, also improved the nutritional composition of the end product. Then it is important, even if you're using solar dryers, you maintain hygienic condition. Remember, when you purchase the chili products, when you dry, before you dry, you need to clean. Ensure you use clean water to avoid contamination, because contamination will start from the farmer's level upwards. So if you don't observe nutritional or hygienic conditions while you are drying, you will carry all that contamination to your final product. So it is important to maintain hygienic conditions throughout the supply chain. So this can be done at the farm's level. When you are harvesting, when you are handling the product, how you transport them to the market, before drying, cleaning, all those ones, so that the end product will be rich. You might use solar drying, you use the pretreatment, but at the end, you have a product that is not microbiologically safe. So you need to combine all these ones so that at the end, you have a product that is safe for consumption of your end consumer. Yeah, so those are some of the selected references that I used, mostly in the literature review. Thank you.
Thank you. I was responding to a call. We can appreciate Kawira for the good presentation, which is actually very informative, very persuasive, and again, interesting. So, do we have any corrections, recommendations that you have, questions that you can ask Kawira over her research or her paper? Somebody, please. Yes.
Thank you very much, Kawira, for the presentation. There's just one clarification that I needed. You mentioned oven drying. You've mentioned the way farmers dry this in the open air, exposing it to microorganisms or whatever, microbes. And you mentioned the solar drying. Now, and in your findings, you say that you did not find any increase in E. coli and Salmonella. So I wanted to know, what kind of solar drying are we talking about here? If it is not maybe in the open air, what kind of solar drying, maybe you can clarify on this kind of solar drying? Thank you.
We have another question from the audience. Without which we would want also to ask one. Frida, you have talked about significant difference in the nutrients after you have compared with the different ways of drying. I just would want to know, what statistical method did you use to analyze the data in comparing these nutrients? So, and again, even before you come to the data itself and analysis, what was your experimental design? What was your experimental design, please? Thank you. Let's allow Frida to respond to those concerns first.
So for the solar drying, so we have oven drying, open air drying, then solar drying. So the ones that I use is the open tunnel solar dryers. It's like, it was a solar dryer that was constructed. It's like this table, then you have glass that is somehow dark, that will maximize heat inside. So a glass like this, of this color. So you have, this is the way they were built, but they are known as tunnel solar dryers. So you don't place your product on the ground. You have a table like this ones, then you have the glass that inside is going to maximize heat. Then you have a pump at the far end to control heat, because if you close the solar dryers, the temperature are going up to 100, but I needed to dry my product at 60 degrees centigrade, because I had done optimization before and determined that 60 degrees centigrade is the best temperature for drying chilies. So inside the solar dryers, you have a pump at the far end. So when the temperatures rise above 60, you open the pump, then the temperature is reduced. So if it goes low, you close the pump, then you allow the chilies to continue being dried. Yes. Then for the significant difference, I used ANOVA to analyze my results from the ones that I got. Then the experimental design, I had the completely randomized block design that I used before conducting the results, then analyzing the results.
So, thank you very much, Kawira. That is a good presentation. I just want to confirm, so that we do not close anybody out in terms of presentation, whether Lydia Nyawira Mburia is anywhere in the hall. Mburia. Maureen Mudhoni Maina. Maureen Mudhoni Maina. Maureen Mudhoni Maina. And if they are not there, do we have Leah Amisi? Leah Amisi. Then we only have one presenter, Dr. Zipporah Buret, who is also in another hall as a session chair, and therefore we will be waiting. That is only what I can say at this point in time, as we near the close of the presentations. Maybe some entertainment as we wait for Dr. Zipporah Buret.
They should have made you a country boy's wife, Amanda, life, my life. They should have made you a gentleman's wife.
Indio gutire kendo gatigarite mayuma kiatungati watasiana ciake ruruo-inĩ rũu ndatirikire Ngai tondũ nĩ amenyaga ruo-inĩ Ngai arĩo ruo-inĩ rũu nyamaro-inĩ hau nĩho Ngai ehanĩte wega ona twameno ona tũgekwo yategũthangania ona ironda ndarakicĩ mwĩrĩ-inĩ wake ndathanganirie kana gĩcoka na thutha ehokire Ngai na kĩũmbũra na kanua ũhinya-inĩ ũyũ wa mũtũrĩre wakwa irĩ ndona mũndũ wĩhokete Jehova amũtiganĩirio hinya-inĩ wa mwĩrĩ rũĩ-inĩ rũu mũkinyeria wa matukũ arĩa hakuhĩ akinyanĩrie na ninĩre ruo ruru ironda ciothe cia ngoro na mwĩrĩ ahonie andute werũ-inĩ wa ruo na mathĩna ruo-inĩ rũrũ Jehova arĩa hakuhĩ ruo-inĩ rũu nyamaro-inĩ hau nĩho Ngai ehanĩte wega ona twameno ona tũgekwo na tũnyararũĩ ruo-inĩ rũu Jehova arĩa hakuhĩ ruo-inĩ rũu ona wameno Jehova arĩa hakuhĩ.
Gũthaithana gwakwa Ngai reke gũkaya gwakwa gũkinyĩre ndũkanahithĩrie ũthiũ waku Mwathani no ũtũme thamake ũtonga-inĩ wa roho waku. Thank you Jesus, hallelujah. Wendo waku Baba erimika wanyendire tu urenadayo nandongegoreka dungerimika ndeithia Baba ngwende ya wanyendire Elishadai iwe moyo iri mwega nagutugeria ondo iri moyo na ndudihagia korwo no undirie ndariganĩra. kũgirĩrĩria wakiri wakwa mũthaithanĩrĩri ihatĩka-inĩ Elishadai iwe muoyo ũrĩithi mwega ũtũgĩria no ũrĩgue iganĩra Elishadai iwe muoyo ũrĩithi mwega ũtũgĩria ũndũire muoyo ndũrĩhagia oro no ũrĩgie ndiganĩra Toka kuga ni wega ni wega kote ni hanene ingihokie mundu wa thino ngikwihoka ukinduta kuo inagetsumi yakuga yakugane wega Getumi yakugane wega 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 niwe hinya wakwa ndoro ni gĩtũmi gĩa kuga nĩ wega nĩ wega Kiangado ni utui waku roho waku mwega ndina gĩtũmi gĩa kuga nĩ wega nĩ wega nĩ wega nĩ wega oiga nĩ
Marute
please. So let's appreciate Dr. Zipporah for us. She takes the stage to present.
Thank you. So I want to take this privileged time that it is almost the end of the presentations, and I've actually have the chance to present, because I initially have to say that I'm very grateful from Kitale National Polytechnic. I'm Dr. Zipporah Berut. I came with a team. We were 4 of us because of we love Nyandarua National Polytechnic. So we came, my colleagues are presented, so it is like I'm the last one. So as you can see, this was actually a kind of a snapshot study which was done in Trans Nzoia. And before I take you through the slides, I just want to say that what actually triggered me in undertaking this study is, apart from me being a trainer, which is actually my call of duty, I also do small farming, because my PhD is actually in the area of supply chain management. So I was actually able to incorporate the production of milk, and then I was able to see the way it is actually adding the value, because in supply chain there is what is known as value addition. So you could be doing farming, but if you don't do it in the right way, or if we don't embrace the current technology, so at times it can frustrate. It has really frustrated farmers, and maybe somehow they don't know. So what triggered me, it is because I could observe what was happening around the village which I am. I could actually observe even the production. I could even see that despite the fact that these people are doing the farming, some people, they are not seeing the value of that milk. And I did this study. So this is not my PhD studies, but I did it because I just wanted to assist the community and also the societies which are there. So the title is actually The Determinants of Milk Production, and I undertaken a situation analysis of the dairy farmers in Trans Nzoia County. So I'm actually the main author, and the co-authors is actually the principal, and also a colleague who has just gone out shortly, Dr. Ongeri. So the background, I was actually trying to look at what is happening globally and also compare what is happening also in Africa. And then I come back to Kenya, because for you to know the problem, you should also see what others are doing outside. So I saw the global perspective, and the literature which is there is what I got. So you realize that this study was actually based in the dairy industry. So the dairy industry is actually the major employer, and you can agree with me that out of the dairy farming, and before I even forget, me, I'm a product of a farmer who was actually doing dairy farming. So somehow it actually gave me the passion to it is actually a major employer, because the fact that he was not actually in the formal employment, he could actually take us to school out of that dairy farming. So in the US, the data which I actually caught is we realized that the US dairy industry is actually working to develop the methods and the data needed to understand the benefits and the impacts of the dairy production and consumption from a food system perspective to improve sustainability. So if you can look at it, they also in the US, they really want to ensure that there is sustainability in the dairy industry. So it is not doing it, but is it able to sustain that farmer? Because if sustainability will be there, even the farmers will be okay, and it will be able to solve even the problems which are there in our country. Because if you can see economically, we are down. That is why we are actually being referred to be developed countries. So I also found out that there was a study which was done in Indonesia in that year. So they were talking about the lack of domestic fresh milk supply produced by the local farmers, and this one, it was caused by several obstacles, and one of them was actually the local farmers' dairy milk, which was actually low. So that background is actually trying to show that there is a problem. So on the regional perspective, I was able to look at the study which was done in Zimbabwe, and they were talking about the dairy value chain, and they also noted that income from the milk byproducts were reported to contribute a certain percent on the gross domestic product. On the national perspective, I saw in Kenya, they are still talking about that low milk production. And they were also referring to maybe most of the farmers, they are doing the production traditionally. So in Trans Nzoia, specifically where I was, there is actually the COVID-19 economic re-engineering recovery strategy of 2020-21. You realize during the COVID, they realized that what are we really going to do? And during that time, they were trying to find ways of enriching these farmers, because even the people who are working could not even access their working place. So they realized the best way the Kenyans could really improve our economic is through the farmers. So that is why this re-engineering strategy of trying to bring back the economic was actually there. And it was actually that way. So if I can basically say that there is high poverty level, despite if you can even go to Trans Nzoia, in every household utapata ng'ombe iko, but you realize there is high poverty level, because you could see some people are even missing fees and all that, despite they have the ads. So there was also the impact of the coronavirus, which was actually in 2019. And then, if we go specifically now to the determinants of milk production, which is specifically for this study, I was actually very much concerned on the size of the grazing land, and also the number of the lactating cows, and also the number of the feed supplements. So in those households which I sample, I was key on, maybe somebody has a quarter of an acre, how many milking cows do you have, and also do you use supplements? So I was actually trying to see, so that I'll see if somebody has a quarter of an acre, maybe they have 2 cows, and I also compare with the production which is there. So on the objectives, so it also caused by the main variables which I have also said. So the main variables is the size of the grazing land. Those are there. To me, it was actually the main determinant. So one of the determinants is the size of the grazing land. Another one is the number of the lactating cows. Another one was the number of the feed supplements. And then there was also a hypothesis which I really wanted to test on it, which is actually in line with the objectives which are already there. So I really wanted to see if there is actually a significant relationship between the size of the grazing land and actually the milk production of the dairy farmers in Trans Nzoia. I also wanted to see if there is a significant relationship between also the number of the lactating cows and also production of milk. And then also the relationship, if it is also there, in the number of feed supplements and milk production. So I was able to come with a theory. In economics, for those who have done economics, they are versed with this theory, the Douglas theory of production. So you realize in this Douglas theory of production, they'll come with the factors which are there. And by the end of it, they'll try to find the marginal productivities of it. So in this theory, I found it is very important because I had actually identified the main factors which are to be the determinants, and I was able to use this theory vis-a-vis with what I'm going to get. Because by the end of it, if I'm going to run the regression, I'll see the factors which are the main actually determinants for milk production. So the conceptual framework was that way. So the research designed was actually majorly descriptive, and the target population, I targeted the farmers who are taking milk to the dairy societies. There are 2 cooperative societies, And the reason why I went to them, it is because that is where the production or most of the farmers were taking milk. So I thought that is where I'm going to get farmers, or actually the right sample, and by the end of it, it will be a good representation. So specifically it was Koitokos, and then also there is one which was morning times. And then I was able to get a total of 60, and that is the way I got it. So in Koitokos, the population is that, but specific dairy farmers are 152, and then which is given a percentage of 76, and that is the way you distribute, and then you get the sample size. In morning times it is that, and then specifically the farmers who are doing the milk are that, and then you distribute it, you get it, and that is actually the way I did my statistics. And then the major data collection method was actually by collecting the data. The data was actually collected in the respective collection centers. I could go to the respective collection centers. I found that the farmers, they are assigned numbers. So in those numbers, you make a request for that farmer to fill. Although at times other farmers, they were not willing to, because they were like, but I was actually introduced by the person who is actually working for them to at least feel friendly to fill the question. So there was also face-to-face interviews on the same, and it was actually majorly to supplement what is in the questionnaire. The data was presented, and then there was also a model of the connectivity test to test the collinearity of the tool, because you realize if it is so collinear, somehow it is not a good tool. So, and then the model specification, it is the way it is. So from that Douglas theory of production, so there is the labor input, capital input, and then there is the error term. So coming specifically now to what I studied. So the labor input now will be maybe the labor in form of the grazing land. There is also the size of the grazing land, because and then also the feeding with supplements. And then of course there was an error term, and then be able to run. If you run, I was actually use a basic Excel to run to get the significance. So if you can check the R squared, although it is not reaching 75, it is actually showing that it is a sizable percentage, which is actually trying to inform. You also try to see the ANOVA. It is also trying to show something. You see what I've highlighted is actually important, the R squared and also the F. And then when it comes to the coefficients, so the X1 was actually the size of the grazing land. So if you try to see, it was not contributing so much for those people who understand the statistics, because if you can check on the T statistics, the B value, so you realize the size of the grazing land is not the main determinant. So I think something which was near it is actually the feed with supplements and the number of the lactating cows. So by the end of it, the linear model for the study was the way it is. So the 3.787 is actually a standard, which is there, 3.785. And then the X1 is 0.036. And then X2, it is 0.56. And then the other one is an error term. So It was actually the study about the determinants of milk production, and then it was in respect, it was actually in Trans Nzoia, and then you can see the model R squared, it is there, which is to talk to the managers of those dairy cooperative societies, and they even told me one day when they call the farmers, we can share the facts because they might not be understanding. And then traditionally they used to think that if you can only feed the cows with Nevia grass, that is enough. But there is a lot of supplements which you can give, which has minerals, and it can increase the production. And that is why the farmers who are doing very well, they are the farmers who already have the silage apart from the Nevia grasses. So you could see maybe they could be having ng'ombe moja. So that is why I did it in Trans Nzoia, because most of the people there know what to do with the cows so that the production will increase. So the feed supplements was actually the one which was high, and then followed by, of course, the number of the cows which are giving the milk. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Daktari. I have a question. I know I want to for you to clarify a bit. You have said that land is a limiting. Land is not a factor to be considered.
When it comes to the main determinant of production is actually giving they can do it intensively, and I think you can even tell me here in Nyandarua, because I understand their cows, you can do it intensively. So it is only that lack of knowledge, because if they don't have the land, they tend to think that they cannot keep the cows, because their notion is if you have to the cows, you must have the land. But you can also try other options, other determinants for you to produce. That is why they are going zero grazing way, and they ensure that they are feeds. So land is not actually the major determinant, but of course it has to be there, because where will you give those animals? But the size is actually does not matter so much. Yes.
Any other concern? Yes, Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, mine is just to thank Daktari for that she has presented. And my concern is if I take my memory back in the village, these people who are working under an intense pressure of farming on the dairy, most of them have no skills in terms of how they are going to improve their production rate at their in their homes or household level. And in TVET institution now we are having some courses, short courses coming up. So if these are cooperative groups, how do you encourage them so that, or what do you advise them so that they learn more on how to improve their production rate in terms of the dairy farming?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So what I can say in the recent, there is actually, there is agriculture department they are looking into starting those small courses and incorporating. They bring the women, and it is not only the dairy sector. We are actually in our institution, we are looking forward to even training women on the way they can also do the chicken. I've realized in Trans Nzoia, it is a good place. In fact, if they are going to do the milk production, apart from the maize, because they normally say it is where the Trans Nzoia it is the basket of actually the maize. So that is why, in terms of agriculture, they tend to think Trans Nzoia about the maize, because the soil is actually good for producing the maize. So apart from that, it is also very good for production in terms of dairy. So we are looking into that, and our institution trying to come with small courses and incorporate the women. We also incorporate the farmers so that we give the information. And the first step which I did, I really went to these cooperative societies. We've been engaging the managers, and they even promise us when they'll be having their own barazas and whatevers, they call us, and then we give her that snapshot during those days so that we empower them, so that they can know that they can do it better. Apart from just leaving the cows to graze, they can do it better. So we are working into that. Thank you for that concern.
Thank you very much, Daktari, for your presentation and for your responses that you have made. At this point in time, I want to call the day's activities off until tomorrow morning at 8:30 in the morning. So I would want to request for just a volunteer to pray, and then we break for tea as we break for our evening. Thank you. Somebody to pray for us. Hakuna mtu mwenye ako kwa roho. Asanti Diana.
Junataka kuomba, wacha nianzie kusema Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Na afunge macho tuombe. Oh God, we come before you this evening. We thank you for the gift of life. Thank you for the protection, and thank you for the care. Thank you for the good session that we had since morning up to now, my Father. All the glories and honors is unto you, my Father. My dear Father, as we are going to disperse, we pray that, oh, my Father, that may your Holy Spirit and your angels watch over us, oh, my Father, for there is none like you. We worship you, my Father, and for those who are traveling, may you give them journey mercies, my Father. In the name of Jesus Christ, I do pray, trusting and believe.